Okay, welcome to part 2 of this glamorous burlesque glove making tutorial. This is what I am using in my champagne audition for the Burlesque Hall of Fame, but this is also what I use for my other costumes too, and I'm just so addicted to this pattern, I'm really using it for every costume. Um, it just, it's a lot of fun. So I'm doing the same thing I did in part 1. I am folding my cuff pieces together, right sides together, creating a tube. Once I turn it inside out, I'm going to layer the two tubes on each other and um, hand sew them to the glove. I'm using hot glue, but I recommend that you use a sewing machine. I was in a pretty big rush filming the audition and everything. I needed these done quick, but you should definitely use a sewing machine if you can. So I'm folding it over. A little glue goes a long way. It can become a really sticky situation if the pile of the fabric starts getting stuck to your glue, so be careful if you're using a glue gun. So I'm turning them inside out. I just love this fabric. I am addicted to it. Please forgive me, my sewing room is an absolute mess. I mean, there are some seamstresses that are super tidy and super organized, and I am envious of their patience and all that, but I am so opposite. I cannot even help it. Yeah, you can see how turning it inside out and sewing it or gluing it with that method gives it this added volume, and we really want it to look like a puff when we're wearing these cuffs over the gloves. They really need to be poofy to have that marabou feather effect. Alright, so all of my pieces are done. So now what I'm going to do is try to brush the hairs down. You want to brush the hairs down as much as possible before you position the tubes on each other, just because when you sew it, you want the fabric to be laying the right direction, just like that. So you're going to have about a 2-inch overlap between your pieces, but the idea is just to get the volume from both pieces and have as much of the hair sticking out as possible. So I'm using a little glue just to tack these down, and that is a little risky. You have to be pretty careful with that. Just be very sparing. The idea is really just to tack it so that both sides, both cuffs will be about the same width. I couldn't have Fifi in this shot because whenever I'm using my sewing, like my sewing table, and I have my glue gun sitting there next to her bed, I don't know why she wants to come over and sniff the glue gun. It's just makes me way too nervous. I'm scared she's gonna burn her nose, so. So there we go, look how fluffy that looks. I wanted to say as well that all the music in the background I made with AI, and I'm creating some music with AI that I want to actually sing to and use during my performances. But sometimes when I'm creating the music, it won't hit the target exactly how I want it, but it will sound really cool. So I actually made a whole little playlist for myself that I can use in the background for tutorials and for my videos that are just basically a playlist of junk files that the AI, created when I was giving it prompts for specific songs. So all the music that you hear, it's just usually small clips about 30 seconds to a minute that I loop over and over because they just sounded neat to me. And um, yeah, usually it's swing music, 1920s, 1930s, but some of the songs just sound pretty cool. So that's why I added them. So if you ever hear a song in the background that just sounds a little bit wonky, you can thank AI for that. My mom threw Fifi on me. Like, she almost threw her on the glue gun, so I had to give her back. Using the AI music for the videos, it really helps in a way because I noticed it's very tricky with YouTube when you're using copyright. Even for background music, I mean, you go through all the trouble of making the video, and even if it's just like an instrumental, they can, take your video down. So my way around that is just to use all music that I've created using AI. So I don't get any of those copyright issues. And most of the covers that I do, you'll notice, like when I'm singing, the songs are really old. Those are actually old recordings that are archived. So those ones, though they do have a copyright, I'm allowed to use them on YouTube. So that's another interesting tidbit. It's not as easy to do that with, modern music. So anyways, so now we're over here with the silver gloves, and what I did is I opened the back seam of the gloves just to make it easier to position my cuff around them. You don't have to do it this way, but unless you have another person like pinning the gloves on you or you have the gloves on another person, this is how I would do it. So I'm just opening up that back seam with a seam ripper. And again, I really would recommend, you know, blinging these after you've put the cuffs on, just because you could do a lot more of this with the sewing machine if you do it that way. This was the first time I had ever made gloves like this, so I got very excited and I wanted to rhinestone them right away before I did anything else. So, yeah, probably wouldn't do that in the future. So you can see where there are these kind of gaps in between the glove and the cuff piece, and that's to allow it to stretch. So I'm basically tacking the cuff onto the glove, but trying to create, it's hard to explain, essentially these folds over. So I'm just tacking the cuff to the glove, and I'm spreading out that slack evenly across the glove top. And then you can add elastic afterwards or just use the natural stretch of the glove. So you can see what I do is I pin the corners of the glove first. So I go ahead and stretch it out, and I'm going to pin those corners to stretch the glove piece as far as I can all the way to the edge corner where I need it to be. And I'll usually tack it in the center once I've reached that, matched the corners of the glove and the cuff piece. Just like that. And then usually I'll put a pin in the center or on the corner. You can usually just pin the corners and then stretch it out and put one in the center as well. And where I put the pins is exactly where I'm going to be hand stitching a knot, or like triple knot it, just to tack it down. So yeah, where I put those gloves is where I'm tacking the piece down. And I usually tack it down towards the bottom as well, but you can see where that slack is sticking out, and that's fine that the slack sticks out that way because we want as much volume as we can get. These were my first trial gloves, so you'll notice that they're not as fluffy as the champagne ones, and that's just because I kind of botched them with glue, but I didn't feel the need to redo these. They were still fluffy enough for me. So what I'm going to do after that is just tack the cuff onto the piece and then turn it around, and from the inside with right sides together I will pull the glove inside out and then sew the edge back closed up, close it back up again so it's not open like that, and yeah, that's how I'll do it. I didn't have the footage of how I did that. You can just say pull the glove inside out with right sides together, seal up that seam exactly the way it was before you seam ripped it. Okay, and there's the gloves, and I'm going to continue with tutorials on how to create this entire outfit, and thank you for watching.